This is the last video that we're gonna do today, and then I actually wanna do a raid, and then after that, I will order myself something. Why Battlefield 5 could have been superb by administrative results. Thing is, about Battlefield 5, to me, that was actually a pretty underrated entry into the series. Sure, it had some controversy at the start, but necessarily it wasn't that bad of a game. With that being said, we're just gonna hop right into this. I gotta make sure unmuted. Okay, perfect, here we go.
Battlefield 5.
Oh, wait, are we going? Yeah. No, like and subscribe.
Gentlemen, Battlefield 5.
Let's start to the video. Okay. Oh boy. I probably should have chat pulled up on my phone. Give me a second. You know, sometimes I remember to do things, sometimes I forget. You know, it's just the way of the world. I'm not that big of a thinker. Yeah, who would have guessed? Give me a second. Okay, there you go. Perfect. Let's continue on.
Was a game plagued with controversy from the start, littered with bugs.
Like I said, it was very controversial. But yeah, there were a fair amount of bugs from what I remember.
Launched, and by the time the dust finally settled, it turned into a decent game. But it could have been an amazing game.
I will say this ahead of time. There should have been more that this game had. The support should not have been cut for this game as early as it was. I mean, they could have done a lot with the Eastern Front. You know, we could have had Soviet Union versus, you know, Germany. We could have had you know, Battle of Stalingrad, Battle of Moscow, Siege of Leningrad, Battle of Kursk. I've heard some speculation on what that would have been like in Battlefield 5. You know, we didn't get D-Day. We didn't get, you know, the fall of Berlin, it's kind of sad to think about, because there was so much this game could have had. There's so much that Battlefield 5 could have had if they just continued support. But unfortunately, you know, controversy was too much for them. And when the game started, it's the same problem that they had with Battlefront 2. It's the same problem that EA and DICE had with Battlefront 2. When the game started to actually get good, they cut support for it, which, to be honest, you know, Battlefield 5, you know, Apex came out of the shell of that game, and for Star Wars Battlefront 2, what came out of the shell was Battlefield 2042, which, oh no, just no, not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But yeah, in hindsight, we were pretty badly shafted from what this game could have been, and it's sad to think about, dude. It's just one of the many tragedies in gaming that, you know, we've touched on. Yeah, not great.
Okay, now the obvious thing. Why am I, as a gun YouTuber, talking about the Battlefield franchise? Well, number of reasons. I, like you, probably play a lot of video games. I mean, I don't play as much now, if I'm being honest with the baby. I feel like I don't get that much sleep either. But hey, that kid's freaking adorable. Anyway, there was a time in my life where I played a lot more video games. It's starting to dwindle down now, though. But one of my favorite game franchise was DICE's Battlefield. And I am still a big fan of Battlefield, even though I'm not really a big fan of 2042. Anyway, now,
I will say, and I will fight tooth and nail to this, Battlefield 1 was the best entry into the series. Battlefield 1. I mean, sure, Battlefield 4 started out with a rocky launch, but it became one of the best. It became one of the best in the series. And I swear to God, people, you know, I'm gonna say this in the most PG way possible. People meat ride the freaking Battlefield 3 so damn much, dude. I mean, sure, it was great. It was great when it came out, don't get me wrong. Oh my god. But people just say that it's the... I've heard people unironically say it's the best video game of all time, which yeah, it's good, but no. It's not the best game of all time. It could be up there. That could be your opinion. But factually, it just ain't. It just ain't. Let's just be real. Battlefield 3 isn't even the best game in the series. In my objective opinion, that's Battlefield 1. Had the best launch, you know. It captivated people for a pretty long time. And it still has a pretty sizable player base on all consoles, essentially. So, I mean, yeah, you could argue that Battlefield 4 also has a pretty big, player base on all consoles, you know, all platforms. But to me, Battlefield 1 just has that spark to it that I didn't really get from Battlefield 4. And yeah, that's why Battlefield 1 will always, in my opinion, be the best game out of the series.
Now, if you're a gun guy, chances are you enjoy in your free time slinging lead in the virtual world because it's actually fun doing force-on-force stuff.
I mean, I would probably never get my hands on the gun, but you know, I guess it's just why my outlet is FPS and TPS games. It's why I'm such a big fan of games like Fallout, like Battlefield, like Call of Duty. Call of Duty is a bit debatable for me. Like, you know, Halo, games like that. That's kind of my outlet for my interest in firearms, because you know, I certainly ain't able to afford any of the dream guns that I would. I will say that my dream gun is, you know, it's an M14. You know the magazine fed Garand. That I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack from gun guys that stumble across this video in my comment section, like, oh my god, no, he wants an M14. Oh! Yeah, I do. So what? Fight me on it.
I mean, think about it. As a gun guy, you can go to the flat range, you can spill out some lead on there, then you can go to the airsoft field, shoot some plastic BBs at a bunch of other fellow nerds, and then after...
Dude, I was thinking about getting into airsoft, but the main problem with that, for me, is, you know, number one, the cost. I mean, it's pretty friggin' expensive to actually do airsoft. From what I understand, some airsoft rigs cost more than, like, cheap firearms. Like, the bougiest setup could cost more than, a what's an example? Like a Glock or a 2011. Yeah, airsoft setups can be ridiculously expensive. I guess for like gamer speak, you know, you could either get like a good PC setup, like a Redux PC setup, optimized to play like the most up-to-date games, or you could get decked out with an entire airsoft setup, like a high-quality airsoft setup. That's how expensive these things are. So yeah, no, that's like it's very cost prohibitive, number one. Number two, I don't live near an airsoft arena or whatever they're called. So that's also, you know, locational wise. God, I'm trying to speak, but it ain't working. Location wise, yeah, ain't gonna happen. Otherwise, you know, I probably like money no objects, and you know, one near me, I would definitely partake, but unfortunately, you know, money is an object, and I live nowhere near an airsoft field, so big oof. for that.
After all that, in your free time between your mundane, monotonous life of working a 9 to 5, you can escape to the battlefields of, say, World War I, World War II, or the modern era. And that's enjoyable, that's fun. As guys, it's kind of...
Or you know, like I said with Fallout, it could be post-apocalyptic. Or, you know, with Halo, it could be futuristic. I mean, you know, they don't need to be... They need to be rooted in reality. Sometimes escape from reality is can, you know, produce a lot better, you know, setting for games in general, especially FPS games.
I have a lonely existence as a dude, and one way guys get together and hang out is by playing video games.
You're gay now? No, I'm not gay, I'm just celibate.
There's no question about it. I like to spend a lot of time with
I don't know where that's from, but looks like an old movie.
My buds playing video games, and it's fun. It's just nature of the beast. And I think they've become an integral part of our society. Are they the best, most efficient ways to spend your time? Probably not, but are they some of the most fun? Absolutely.
Yep.
Now, with that being said, why am I talking about Battlefield 5? Well, in my head, in my brain, there comes a time when I get an idea in my head and I just want to talk about it. And the best way for me to get it out of my system is typically to make a YouTube video about it, and then it's kind of like very cathartic for me, because then it's like everyone in my life is like, okay, we get it. You want to talk about this subject, we don't care. And it's
God, if I had, you know, the actual proper reading capabilities, because, you know, I'm something of an illiterate guy myself. Not really, I know how to read, but I don't know how to speak. If I was able to speak properly and, you know, read properly and whatnot, I would probably have a video, I would probably have an extensive video about Battlefield 5 out already. If I was able to, you know, read and speak properly, I'd probably have a lot of videos out by now, but unfortunately, I am brain smooth, not think clearly, have bad speech. Sad.
like a niche little subject, but weirdly enough, you guys always love it, and I love talking about this stuff, so it's a win-win. Thanks, YouTube. Thank you for watching, if you are.
Don't be ridiculous. Thank you.
One thing I just couldn't get out of my head was the Battlefield 5 franchise, because I, even to this day, still play Battlefield 5. Looking at the game, seeing how it does...
I still play Battlefield 1. I would play 5 again, but... Dude, just me thinking about what the game could have been, and like how it was never finished, that just kind of turns me off of that. It just kind of turns me off of that game. It's partly the reason why I don't play Overwatch 2 anymore. Like, the big reason being, you know, we were absolutely deceived by Activision Blizzard, number one. Number two, like, it pains me to think about what the game could have been like. So, and me just thinking that, it's just, yeah, I don't want to play the game, because I don't want to have those thoughts about, you know, what could have been. Or, like, you know, what will never be. Like, I play games to get those thoughts out of my head, essentially. If that makes any sense. But, yeah.
Now, and seeing what they did to it, one, it breaks my heart because the game actually had so much potential. I think it's probably one of their better games they made, which is kind of controversial, but the problem is they really started off on the wrong foot and they did not really listen to their audience. Now, you know what else the problem is?
He's about to get into an ad, but I will say this. Yeah. I will say this. It's probably an EA habit, or it could be a DICE habit. I don't know. Like, I see both of them as like I see both of them as problematic in this instance. But the thing is, they shouldn't cut off support for games that launch terribly, and like when they're starting to bounce back, you know, they pull the plug. They shouldn't do that. They shouldn't have done that. Like, we should still be getting content for Battlefront 2. Like, we should have gotten the Eastern Front and whatnot for Battlefield 5. But unfortunately, it could be out of pettiness, it could be out of like a whole bunch of different things, but for whatever reason, they cut off support for both of those games, and now like they're just left unfinished. Like, like, if you look at either of those games, they are not in a finished state. Like, there are still a lot of issues, number one, with bugs. And, like, they don't feel content complete. Like, it feels like, you know, DICE and or EA just stopped working on the game. Like, they just left it unfinished. Like, it's forever going to be a work in progress. To me, that kind of is just like a major sort of issue with you know, that whole sort of thing. But yeah, let's get into this ad, I guess.
Going cold turkey, it's not fun. And to help break your bad habits, Fume is here to help you. These streets ain't what they used to be, toots. Now, Fume can help you break these habits in a different way. Not everything in a habit is wrong. So instead of drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning, flavored air device. And it does exactly that, helping you remove the bad from your habit. Instead of
Wait, so is this like a vape, but not actually?
electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, it uses flavored, and instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural flavored air. Delicious. Your Fume comes with an adjustable.
So it's a smokeless, you know, no, like, what is the word I'm thinking of? It's a smokeless, no, not harmful type of, like, smoking alternative. Like, it's a cigarette vape alternative, essentially. This is really interesting, now that I think about it.
Airflow dial, and it also has movable parts and magnets for fidgeting. It helps give your fingers a lot to do when you're feeling a little bit stressed out. You can take the edge off. Fume also just launched Base. It's a weighted rest to hold your Fume when you're not using it. The Base has magnets inside that attaches to your Fume, and the Fume device can be spun around on that base while you're not used, which is also another great tool for fidgeting.
Dude, I want to get this, but the thing is, I'm probably not going to be able to because, you know, again, cost prohibitive. I don't currently have a lot of money to my name, which kind of sucks because this looks, you know, like something that would actually curb my intrusive thoughts of actually getting into nicotine products.
Now this thing's actually pretty well balanced, got a good weight to it, nice little aesthetic, and it actually does taste pretty good. I'm fuming, baby. The fidget's actually pretty slick. Stopping something can be challenging, but with Fume, they make it easier. With over 150,000 customers and thousands of success stories, this could be you. It's literally me. So join Fume in accelerating the destruction of humanity's bad habits. You can pick up the Journey Pack today by heading over to the website. There's going to be a link in the description down below, and I encourage you to head over to tryfume.com/administrative or scan the QR code and use code administrative to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today.
Is this like G-Subs where you can actually get a free sample? If so, then I'll be down.
That's tryfume.com to save 10% on your order today. One big controversy they had from the start was the inclusion.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if there's a free sample. He didn't say. That was a good ad read though. Like, for what it was, that was actually pretty solid. I give it like a 9 out of 10.
Of women. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a touchy subject in the year 2024 because in the modern era, we are very progressive.
Dude, again, I'm going to say this and I don't think it's, and you know, like, I'm going to say this and like, this is what I've said in the past on the subject to like people that I've been around. I don't necessarily think it matters because, like, dude, if you think about it, in a similar regard, Battlefield 1 wasn't realistic. Because what I'm getting at is the argument for, you know, women being included in Battlefield 5 was, it was not realistic. And to that I say, Battlefield 1 wasn't realistic. Because, like, what was World War 1? What was World War 1 based around? Trench warfare. How much trench warfare do you see in Battlefield 1? Very little. Like, very little to none whatsoever. Like, it's very boots on the ground. It's very, you know, it's it's very reminiscent of actual like World War II style warfare instead of as opposed to World War One, because you know, even though you have things like chemical weapons and you know just the technology from World War One, a lot of what you see in Battlefield 1 are pretty much World War II tactics. Especially if you count that every single side can spawn in with like vehicles like tanks and you know planes and whatnot. Not every country back then had access to that you know that equipment. Like, you know, you didn't see Germany with land ships, or you didn't see, you know, the Ottoman Empire flying biplanes, right? So yeah, so you know, the argument of, you know, it not being realistic that there's women in Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1 was not the pinnacle of realism either. So if you have a problem with Battlefield 5, you should probably have a problem with Battlefield 1. Just saying. Again, there's a whole political issue to this as well, but again, we barely get into politics on this channel. I will keep on saying that. But yeah, it's just, I just wanted to give my input on this.
We like to think that we are all inclusive to every gender, orientation, race, ethnicity, but if I can just take you back to the world of 1940s, none of that exists.
Yeah.
If it does, it's very rare, all right? That world is a not progressive, not forward-thinking world. Women are not expected to be in combat arms roles, and it is a very different landscape than what EA was trying to force down us. Now I do think...
Yeah, I will concede that, you know, there were some points where, you know, actual devs were trying to fight tooth and nail to try to defend the inclusion of women in Battlefield 5. I will concede that, you know, those people did try to, you know, shove it down other people's throats, but that is just a problem that some people had. Not everybody, but a lot. But you know, there were some people that just thought that it was a problem. I mean, to me, I didn't really necessarily care. I just thought, is the game going to be good? Like, that was the only thought that I had. Like, how will this game compare to Battlefield 1? Like, that was the only thing that I thought. You know, maybe other people were actually, you know, had a problem with it. Had a problem with, you know, there being women in the game. I didn't necessarily have a problem with that. I just, you know, wanted the game to be good. And, you know, I had a lot of fun when the game first came out.
I think EA was up to something a little bit more nefarious that we'll get to in a bit, but let's kind of break down what's going on with the whole whammon thing in Battlefield 5. Now, one of the trailers they started off with in Battlefield 5 was this goofy little, kind of silly tone, and this is how they debuted Battlefield 5 to the world. And in that trailer, they had Robot Arm Girl, but it's more so prosthetic Arm Girl, fighting alongside what looks like a bunch of high-speed World War II operators.
I will say that this was, that the initial trailer for this game, it wasn't great necessarily, because it didn't look like World War II. It just looked like, I mean, you know, you had the Thompson, you had the guys wearing the helmets. Yeah, I mean, you could kind of tell that it was like in the World War II era, but it didn't necessarily look like a World War II game, so to speak.
Here's something to take into consideration, okay? World War II is a very heavy topic. Millions and millions of people died during this conflict.
Yeah.
A lot of us have had family members. I had a grandfather that was involved in World War II. He has since passed away. And chances are it's all pretty fresh in our memory. So
yeah, I didn't have a family member personally, but you know, but I do have a few friends on Discord. I think two of them, their like grandfathers fought in, like, God, I'm trying to remember. One of them was in Japan, I'm pretty sure. God, I forget what the other. I don't know. I might have to ask them, but yeah.
Oh, when DICE launches this trailer with the silly tone they have, and everyone's kind of like, this is a World War II game we're getting, and it doesn't have the ambiance, because you got to think too, Call of Duty World at War existed, and when Call of Duty World at War launched, they had this tone that was super dark and ominous. And
yeah, I mean, again, the opening trailer for Battlefield 5 didn't look like looked like it was in the World War II era, but it didn't look like a World War II game. When you have World at War, you could easily tell that, this was a World War II game. I kind of feel like there's a way to do trailers right, especially if you're making a game on the topic like World War I, World War II, the Gulf War, the Vietnam War. There's a way to do it right and actually, make it look like it's related to, make the trailer look like it's related to the subject matter that you're making the game off of, right? That's why this looks like World War II. This feels like World War II. When you had Battlefield 5's trailer at the beginning that, didn't necessarily look like World War II and didn't necessarily feel like it either. That's my thing.
And it was really freaking good, and it really captures the horrors of the experience of what soldiers would have gone through. And for DICE to give us this really lighthearted, silly trailer off the rip, I'm not saying they could have come back to it for different gameplays and styles, but for off the rip to really set the tone, it wasn't like what we were expecting, because when Battlefield 1 trailer dropped, it was a way more dark, ominous tone.
Yeah, they nailed it. DICE and EA hit the nail right on the head with the Battlefield 1 trailer. I mean, yeah, it was dark. Let's just go back a few seconds. Hang on, go back a few seconds. 10.
And styles, but for off the rip to really set the tone, it wasn't like what we were expecting, because when Battlefield 1 trailer dropped, it was a way...
Look. You see the British soldier sinking a hatchet in a German soldier's, I think it's shoulder blade.
More dark.
Yeah, just look at this. It's more dark. It's more gritty. It feels like you're actually in the Great War.
Ominous tone. You knew it was going to be the war to end all war.
Yeah, it felt like World War I, essentially.
Wars. Spoiler, that wasn't.
What do you mean, one?
But when Battlefield 5 launched, that trailer was just a flop. And it definitely showed when it came to numbers of pre-orders to the like-dislike ratio on the trailer. It was pretty bad. Now, I was expecting they were going to include women to some capacity because women were actually involved in World War II.
Yeah, and to be fair, EA and DICE did get this right. Did get the trailer situation right. Not with the first one. Want to see what they got it right with? Battlefield 5. Okay, yeah. So they got it right. They got it right with this trailer. Oop. See this? I'm only going to show you the first few seconds because I think there's copyright music. So yeah, you see, like in the first 25 seconds of the trailer, you already know what's going on. Like, dude, you got your US soldier right here, standing on the boat, overlooking an island. And behind them are a ton of other, foot soldiers. And on the opposite end, you can easily tell that this is a soldier from the Imperial Army of Japan, has his rifle, standing front and center. And yeah, you know what's gonna go down. You know what's going on. You know that this that this is World War II, you know, this is the Pacific theater of World War II. You would easily be able to get it in the first 25 seconds of the trailer, right? And surprisingly, a lot of people, if you go down into the comments, well, initially, like, not so much anymore, but from what I saw, like, people said that this should actually be, yeah, like this guy, Griffin Gaming. This is how the game should have been advertised to begin with. Couldn't have said it better myself. Genuinely couldn't have said it better myself. This should have been the actual launch trailer of the game. You know, you had two sides, two perspectives, the setting. You know, you actually got a good look at the setting in the first 25 seconds of the trailer. That's how to do it This is how to do it properly. And you know, on the opposite end, you got the actual Battlefield 5 launch trailer, which, yeah, comparing the two, Pacific trailer blew the initial launch trailer out of the water. And that goes without saying.
Even in fighting roles. Now, this goes against the norm of most of the societies that had fought in World War II, but I mean, if you think about the Soviet snipers racking up kills against the Germans that were females, if you think about the partisan fighters and the women involved in fighting in Nazi-occupied areas, think about women involved in espionage, thinking about all that, women had an excellent role to play in World War II, not just in that role, but as a whole. I mean, factory jobs were filled up by women, you know, doing all sorts of support stuff, but pretty much every Allied country and Axis country, minus Soviet Russia, women were not expected to fight. Like, this was a big no-no. And we have to realize is that women fighting and the forced inclusion of women fighting in a setting like this really goes against the natural law of everything we know. And we're kind of programmed as humans to realize, like, hey, maybe women shouldn't be on the front line fighting alongside us. There's a caveat to this, because there have been stud women that defy the norm of the usual type that have been, even in today's armed forces, fighting. And those women, very capable, as long as they meet the standards and pass everything, they're gonna be pretty good at what they do. Now,
yeah, I mean, that is, there were exceptions to this in both world wars. I believe there was a Serbian sniper in World War I that was a female, and you know, she ended up surviving up until the end of the war. And you know, there's like a Sabaton released a song about that woman. The song's called "Lady of the Dark." I'm pretty sure she was Serbian, at least from like the history video they put out. I don't know. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Now, I know speaking negatively about women involvement in anything in the year 2024 has a potential to get you canceled.
Come on, you've been warned.
One,
Yep.
I don't care. Two, I know I'm objectively right. And
Yeah, if you're worried about, you know, yeah, you shouldn't be worried about being canceled. I mean, literally. I uploaded the video recently. You know, hang on. This one right here, where I reacted to "The Male Gaze is Good Actually" by Short Fat Otaku. And I just you know, joked about this video might get me canceled. But yeah, I'm not really too worried about getting canceled, because number one, who in their right mind would cancel a guy that only has 20 subscribers? Like, that just seems like a waste of time. But yeah, you shouldn't worry about being canceled. I mean, a lot of people just brush it off anyway.
And you also feel this way too. Women involved in any sort of combat arms role in World War II is just non-existent. It's 99.90% of all combatants during World War II are going to be men. Now, I have nothing against strong, independent women that are able to run and gun. If anything, I'm a very avid proponent of women being well-trained and well-armed with firearms. I think firearms are the...
I think what it boils down to is people just had a problem with the initial trailer. where, there's a woman up front and center, with not cybernetic, a prosthetic arm. And, that was the initial trailer. And, like, people formulated opinions from that. People complained about it. And, whatever his name was, I think he used to be like a direct, I don't know. He had some role in DICE. Leading up to him being terminated. But he pretty much said, don't like it, don't buy it. So, like, there being women in the game. And that ended up being a PR disaster, essentially. And he was rightfully terminated after that. But the effects from that ended up lingering because not a lot of people bought into it. A lot of people actually bought it a lot of people just bought it, played it for like 45 minutes and then left a bad review. Probably less than that. Probably less minutes than that. But, people were just ragging on this game because of, the absolutely terrible response from that one guy. I'm forgetting his name. Not important. Let's just keep going.
The great equalizer.
There's something in my eye.
Women physically are at a disadvantage to men. This is just simple biology that people will try and ignore in the modern era. If we just look at reality, women are going to be, as a baseline, outmatched by the average dude. And a great way to get over this is firearms. Firearms are an excellent tool to take on a large aggressor. I mean, if you took a 5'5", 120-pound woman and some 6'4" dude that weighs 270, looking like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, wanted to have nefarious intentions with that woman, that girl's best bet is called a Glock 43X.
Yeah, there's no way somebody like that is going to actually going to win a pitched fight against a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson looking fella. You know what I'm saying? It just ain't gonna happen. The only solution is, firearm, pretty much, or knife, or any other implement that can be used with lethal force. But yeah, that would be their best bet, because pretty much, winning an actual bout of hand-to-hand combat would probably not be realistic in a sense.
Or a Glock 19, or whatever her preference of carrying is. And that dude is going to be mincemeat, I guarantee you, especially with some G9 ammo. Oh my God, have you seen what G9 does to a watermelon? So I'm, if anything, a very strong proponent of women having and using firearms. Now, even in the modern day setting, the US does have women involved. They've since opened it up, but it is very rare because, in my opinion, I think if women want to be in a combat arms role, they have to undergo the same requirements as men. I think if they don't, that's a disservice. But in the modern era, a lot of women are involved in jobs that pay you to carry a gun. Now, is this often advised based on seeing some of this women? I'm gonna be honest with you. I've seen some women that look like they don't belong in law enforcement, at the very least. I can't speak to the military, but in law enforcement, I will say, I've seen some ladies that look very feminine, that look like they're not gonna be able to hold their own in a fight. Granted, they're strong, they're tough girls, but when it comes to like a street fight in the sense of a cop setting, it's usually a bad idea.
Yeah, but there are incompetent people, like, all around, essentially. Number one. Number two, there are some like male cops that definitely don't have the muscular physique, skin and bones fellas that are in law enforcement. Yeah. Those guys, I don't know. I tried to make something there and my brain just collapsed. I'm sorry. I tried to make a point. My brain just collapsed, dude.
Now, on the flip side, I've seen some very scary women. I've seen women that you would definitely not want to cross, especially when they have a massive Belgian Malinois chomping at the bit to bite your earlobes off. So, there of course are exceptions to the rule. In today's society, it is a little bit frowned upon to talk about this in this setting. Nah, I don't care. Quite frankly, my darling, I don't give a damn. So I know it's a sensitive topic when talking about women, especially in a role like this, because everyone wants to be like, girl power, but in reality, it's like, you better be a stud woman. Because I've seen some scary folks, both out and about. I'm a decently sized fella, and I don't want to mess with those guys. So, there is that.
What are we talking about again? Battlefield 5?
I kind of lost the plot a bit too. So yeah, that's understandable.
When DICE comes out and says, look at our strong female protagonist lead and try and force this narrative upon us, we have to go and step back and say, okay, well, why is this going on? Before we get there, I'm trying to like really tease you guys. We have to talk about the video game itself. Now, the video game itself is actually pretty good. Once they kinked out all the bugs, once they got a lot of new updates going, the game actually seemed pretty solid, and it still holds up to date.
Yeah, like, it was really good. One of my favorite parts of about Battlefield 5 was faction-based loadouts. So yeah, for factions like Germany, the UK, later on the US and Japan, you could have like historically accurate loadouts for those factions, right? So yeah, if you wanted to actually roleplay a certain certain scenario, or you wanted to actually have like the armies be kind of true to form, you could pretty much do that and not have to worry about a lot. Not have to worry about like changing your loadouts every single match you get into when you play as Germany one. When you play as Germany one match and then you switch to UK the other, you don't really have to worry about changing, weapons back and forth. So that's kind of a neat little thing that they did.
Now, is it like a hardcore, World War II shooter where it feels like you're in World War II? It's all super historically accurate? Absolutely not. It is not that. If anything, it feels like a modern shooter.
If you want to play a game like that, hell let loose. That's my suggestion. Yeah. Battlefield games, especially like, World War II Battlefield games and, the World War I Battlefield game, they're not rooted in reality, essentially. They essentially use the settings of the past with modern sort of movements, tactics, things like that. So, yeah, not historically accurate.
With the World War II skin. But you get some awesome World War II tanks, weapons, outfits, and that's all. It's always a vibe. If you're a fan of World War II history, you're going to enjoy that. So some context on my...
I'm a big fan of the World War II setting when it comes to video games. If you didn't already say that.
Myself in Battlefield 5 is that I am a avid Battlefield player. I played a ton of Battlefield 1. I got very good at Battlefield 1. I was a younger man with a lot more time on my hands, and I often used the flanker tank in Battlefield 1. My best game ever. I won 121-0. That's pretty good. I'll take that.
Dude, I popped off with the friggin' sniper in Suez. Like on that map in Battlefield 1, dude. Oh my god. Used like the marksman it was like the marksman Enfield with a 3x scope. Dude, I cleaned house, bro. I cleaned house in that one match. Jesus Christ. Oh my god, bro. Back then, when I played Battlefield 1, I used to be on top of things. I used to clean up back then. Oh my god. So freaking good, man. I want to play Battlefield 1 again. I probably will pretty soon.
Now, when Battlefield 5 rolls around, I was pretty excited. I was curious why they didn't do a modern shooter, but nonetheless, I wanted to try it out because I, like you, love World War II. Now,
I wanted Bad Company 3. I was one of those people that wanted, them to actually make a third Bad Company game as opposed to Battlefield 5. Did I complain when, Battlefield 5 dropped? Nah. Matter of fact, I actually got the pre-order and installed it the night it was about to drop. So, yeah. I was pretty hyped for this game as well.
Now, the game plays very well. Once they work the bugs out, even today, I'll still play it and I still enjoy it. I think it is fun. I think the inclusion of a little bit more, less World War II aspect, where it's like essentially every rifleman can have a optic of a 3-time optic of some kind. I like that kind of stuff. I think it plays a little bit more enjoyable as far as a mainstream shooter goes. The movement felt very fluid. I loved the gunfighting. All the guns felt pretty solid when you're shooting and playing with them. I also enjoyed the building mechanic. I enjoyed the combined arms of armor, infantry, aircraft, all the artillery pieces that you could interact with, the machine gun placements you can interact with. I thought it was pretty good. If anything, it felt like a streamlined version of what Hell Let Loose is. If you ever played Hell Let
if you want an authentic experience, well, semi-authentic experience, you should probably play this game. Hell Let Loose is very solid from what I've seen. Oh my god! But yeah, back to the gameplay of Battlefield 5. It felt very visceral. It felt like you were actually in. You felt like you were actually in control. You didn't really feel boxed in. The game played very smoothly, from what I remember.
Let Loose or any other hardcore World War II shooters, I'd encourage you to check them out. I think they'd actually even make you a better video gamer on the mainstream games because they teach you a lot of patience and tactics that you wouldn't really pick up with the dopamine rush style modern game. Anyway, those hardcore games do an excellent job of capturing the much.
Real quick, if there's a World War II game you should probably avoid, I wouldn't play Enlisted. It's just for a free-to-play game, free-to-play FPS game nonetheless, it's not that great. By all accounts, it is not that great of a game. Yeah, I would just save up money and get, if you're on PS5, Xbox Series S or X, or PC, I'd just save up money and get Hell Let Loose. I wouldn't bother with Enlisted.
Much more intense vibe. It's like a walking simulator, and then you just get domed in the head out of nowhere. And it's like, all right, this is pretty realistic if we're being honest. But on Battlefield 5, it's a much more user-friendly, masses video game, and I'm okay with that. I think it's fun. You know, it's like, all right, I could either go play the PTSD simulator Hell Let Loose, or I can go play Battlefield 5 and at least have a much more fun time where I'm not getting wrecked and walking 20 minutes between each objective. Depends on what mood you're in for, right? I think they did an excellent job. Of course, there's stuff I wish they would have done. You know what really bugs me? This is totally another side tangent. How come no one ever adds the King Tiger tanks to the video games? Because in Battlefield 5, there's a really cool mechanic within your squad where if you get enough points, you can call in extras like airstrikes, artillery strikes, a V2 rocket.
Oh my god, the V2, bro. If there's one thing that I had a pet peeve with, it was when somebody called down the freaking V2. Oh my god, you would just be walking, you would just be trying to take an objective, you'd be running towards it, and all of a sudden start hearing a crackling in the air, and it gets louder and louder and louder, and boom, you get wiped. And you get wiped with an entire freaking squad, dude. Oh god, that's one of the things I hated. I hated being on the receiving end. Calling those down was always a fun time, but being on the receiving end, yeah, not fun.
Increased tanks. It would have been cool if they would have included like the King Tiger 2 in that. The game had a lot of potential to dive into some historical topics that we love, and they could have kept expanding on it. Now, thankfully, DICE would give us a Pacific Theater campaign, which is also a very interesting, gnarly theater of warfare during World War II. You can either play as a Japanese soldier or as an American Marine, and the Marine camo looks freaking sick. I got a set that I got from this video's sponsor, Americana Pipe Dream Apparel. Wow, what a segue. Guys, Americana Pipe Dream is an excellent place where you get no sponsor. I guarantee you they even have some World War II stuff floating around on the website. They have night vision knives, manuals, a bunch of cool stuff that you probably need to fulfill your military dreams and fantasies. Don't let them just be dreams. Make them happen. Go check them out. They have stuff always coming onto the website, and their cool stuff does sell out pretty quick, so I would keep up to date with what they have going on if you're on the particular hunt for something. Guys, a big thank you to Americana Pipe Dream yet again for sponsoring this video. World War II.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna give that ad read a 7 out of 10 because way too abrupt. Number one. Number two, something else. I don't know.
Now what's interesting is that DICE chose to release a World War II game right after releasing a World War I game. Now it's usually not advised to burn out the audience like this on historical periods. If you gotta think, like, even myself, if I'm making a YouTube video and say I'm going over shotguns, and
I didn't really necessarily have a problem with that, because it felt more natural to me than just releasing a World War I game, then releasing something like, let's just give an example, like Battlefield 2143. Like, if that came out after Battlefield 1, I'd be like, alright. But it just felt much more natural that, it felt much more natural that, you know, a World War II game would come after a World War I game, because, well, World War II came after World War I, so I don't know. Something just feels natural about, you know, games coming out in that order too. I mean, did I want Bad Company 3 badly? Kinda, but at the same time, I didn't necessarily hate the release of Battlefield 5, like a lot of people did.
Just 10 videos in a row of me going over shotguns, chances are you guys would get pretty bored. So it was a very bold move for them to go straight from World War I to World War II, and it seemed like a strategically bad move. I think they should have gone World War I to a more modern setting and then back to World War II.
I mean, like, I still think 2042 should have came after Battlefield 5. Just, you know, give it a lot more time, tender love and care, nurture, and then release it. So, you know, if I were to put a game in between Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, okay, so timeline would look like this. Battlefield 1, Bad Company 3, which I would have be a Vietnam-centered game, right? So Battlefield 1, yeah, you know, the Vietnam setting in Bad Company 3. You move to Battlefield 5, and then you go to the semi-futuristic 2042. That would be the roadmap that I would actually have out there. But again, that's just how I would do things. Maybe y'all's opinions are different. Hey, that's just what I would do.
I think that would have kept the audience fresh and on their toes, because at that time in 2018, it's rolling into 2019. In that era, we have the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which I honestly think that Call of Duty was pretty.
And also, but yeah, at the same time, if you actually if you release 2042 in after Battlefield 1, it wouldn't be that weird to see women on the front line. It genuinely wouldn't be, because it wouldn't make sense. It would kind of make sense, and then you could just have an actual, you know, World War II game that's semi-rooted in reality, right? You wouldn't really have that much issues. So maybe it's a disservice that Battlefield 5 came out after 1. But at the same time, you know, everything happens for a reason. You know, it's just, I don't know.
Freaking good. Oh my god, I'm sounding like such a turbo virgin.
Hey, I want to go back, because I actually want to talk about
18, it's rolling into 2019. In that era, we have the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which I honestly think that Call of Duty was pretty freaking good.
Yeah, objectively, MW 2019 is probably the only shining star out of the series. I mean, sure, you had the OG Modern Warfare trilogy, you had Black Ops 2, you had, you know, all of these other games. But what made Modern Warfare 2019 so groundbreaking for COD was it changed the paradigm, essentially. It turned a lot of things on its head. It returned to being like somewhat graphic and, more having a more gritty tone to it, as opposed to, Black Ops 4, which, dear lord. But yeah, it went back to a modern setting. It rooted itself in reality. It rooted itself in reality. It went back to like a darker, grittier sort of theme. And yeah, all around like new engine, so it played a lot better. Then again, a lot of people are gonna say, but they appeal to campers. They appeal. Shut up. This dude, MW 2019 was so much better than like a lot of the other games that came before. That goes without saying, dude. COD sucked up until freaking MW 2019, man. Let's just get that out of the way. Let's just not kid ourselves. This, like, MW 2019 was, was the best COD has ever looked, and it's probably the best it will ever look until they decide to, change the paradigm again. And I feel like a lot of people are thinking that the next Treyarch game, which apparently is going to be Ruin the Gulf War, might be that game that changes the paradigm again. I'm not holding out my hope for anything, but hey, only time will tell, right?
Good. Oh my god, I'm sounding like such a turbo virgin. I've been shot at by an MG42. Have you? I can make this video. I have a right to make this video. I've actually used a lot of the guns in Battlefield 5, not all of them, but I've gotten my hands on quite a number of them. Even the more obscure. I've gotten my hands on Ian McCollum's show shot, run the MG42 and 34 thanks to my buddy Nick. I've got my hands on the Thompson, the MP40, the M1 Garand, Lee Enfield sniper rifles, Kar 98. I've shot a lot of those guns.
But did you fire the RSC 17? I think that's what it was called. Because, dude, literally nobody that I know of, I should say, has a gun like that. Like, those are incredibly hard to come by. My god. And also the Volksgewehr, which is essentially the Sturmgewehr 1.5 in Battlefield 5. Yeah, those are some weapons that are incredibly hard to come by nowadays. Pretty much non-existent
in that video game. And so I think that it's a really fun time period, and it's even fun to use the more obscured guns that maybe were just not that used at all. They're like super rare one-offs. Yeah. And it even makes me still mad that DICE didn't have an Eastern Front setting for including the Soviet weapons, because the Soviets had some fun guns like the PPSH 41 and 40.
Bro, okay, I'm gonna say this. Dude, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that we don't have an Eastern Front sort of setting in Battlefield 5, but the KP-31 is in the game, which is a Finnish submachine gun. It doesn't make any sense, because nobody on the Western battlefields used the KP-31. It would have made more sense if there was an Eastern Front setting, because the KP-31 would actually make sense then, being in the game. Like, I think they were just looking at some machine guns from the World War II time, and they just needed to put one more in the game, and they're like, you know what, that Finnish submachine gun looks pretty good. The KP-31, let's put that in the game. We don't know if they were going to put in the Eastern Front, but let's just put that in the game. Let's just slap that in there. It don't make any sense, dude. That's all I'm gonna say.
43. Those guns went pretty freaking hard. What are you gonna do? And it's fun. And, it's a video game setting, it's fun. I'm not looking for hardcore realism. I'm looking to have a good time in a game like that. And I think Battlefield 5 did a good job ultimately in the end, and I think it's still doing decent with a good player base staying active, but it could have been really good. Another weak point of the game is they started off from a historical context on a very weak foot. So when the game launched, they initially wanted to really focus on the more forgotten, obscure battles that took place towards the start of World War II. Now the problem is, a lot of the cool guns that would be involved in those battles, a lot of the cool gear, equipment, tanks, pretty much everything really wasn't around just yet. They would come around.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem if you want to focus on some of the more obscure, minor battles of World War II, right? If you want to do that, all the power to you. At least balance that out with some major battles, right? Which they kind of did. They kind of did that, but at the same time, we're still missing a lot of. We were still missing like a lot of things by the time they ended up cutting support for the game. Which, oh my god, dude. They could have added D-Day into the game, because that was around the time where they stopped adding it, where they stopped, adding in content and eventually cut support for the game. They could have done that, but unfortunately, they just drew back support and eventually cut it off permanently, which big F's in the chat for that one.
During the later years of the war. Simple example, SCG-44 wouldn't really start showing up until late 44 and 45. And if you're like fighting in 1941 battle in the North Africa and you're all running around with historically inaccurate guns, is that the end of the world as far as video games are concerned? No, but DICE really could have expanded on a lot of game modes. They could have included
they just need to, like, in terms of guns, they just need to add in, like, they just needed to put content in the game. It didn't matter if, it wasn't all historically accurate. They just needed to put stuff in the game. So that's why, in historical context, that's why a lot of those weapons are still around, were around. Yeah, that's why they put in. That's why they were in those maps when. Yeah.
More hardcore realism game modes, and they could have satiated a lot of the appetites of multiple different factions, making their game a powerhouse on the market. Now, here's the thing. If you're gonna go see your favorite musician and they don't play the hits, you're gonna be kind of bummed. Of course, you're gonna enjoy their new stuff they're working on, their new niche music, but you want to hear what they're known for, and DICE did not deliver that. They essentially said, hey, here's all the obscure, boring battles that would be historically inaccurate with all the weapons we're using, and have fun. They did not give us Stalingrad, they didn't give us Normandy, they didn't give us D-Day, they didn't give us Battle of the Bulge, and they also, on another note, left out the entirety of the Eastern Front, the Ostfront, and that's a real big bummer.
Yep, no Soviet Union whatsoever, which I feel like they could have done so much with that, dude. Again, you got Leningrad, you got Stalingrad, got Kursk, you got Moscow. You got a whole bunch of battlefields in Ukraine, Poland, Belarus. You could have done so much with the Eastern Front, dude. You could have thrown in the Winter War, since you had the LS-26 and the aforementioned KP-31. You could have made Finland a playable faction. That would have, dude, you could have done that, but you didn't. You just cut out the entire Eastern Front. Oh my god.
Because it's a front that's over 2,000 miles long and contains some of the most atrocious fighting in human history, and they just left it out. It's literally like World War II is pretty much like everything else is a subsidizing story to the Russians taking on the Germans. That's some good stuff right there, man. That's really good stuff.
It sucks that they didn't put this. It sucks that they didn't put this in Battlefield 5. Yeah, Call of Duty Vanguard released, and it just absolutely. It just butchered the Eastern Front in the campaign. Oh my god, dude. It just... When your competitor does it worse than you could have done it much better, that should really say something.
and they just left it out and exchanged it for really boring stuff, if we're being honest. They even went as far to change history with the Nordlies mission by replacing the British commandos with women. It's like another thing of like wokeism coming into a video game and essentially doing a bunch of disservice to the audience and doing a lot of disservice to history, because it's like dudes died on that operation and they made it seem like, it's girl power. I know I sound very misogynistic and I don't care. Sue me. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I'm not real. I'm in a YouTube video. I am the patriarchy. So why does DICE change the narrative so much? Or why does EA force the narrative to be changed? Even in the multiplayer, there are women you can play as in the combat setting. Now in modern day video gaming, that's become the norm, but it's just very taking you out of it.
I hate that they put in like they were essentially operators, but they call them like elite characters. I don't remember. I hate that they put in operators in this game, because that's the bulk of 2042 right now. Like, you know, for 2042, they're not gonna add in the basic 4-class system where you play as generic guys. They're not gonna do that because, you know, operators, aka specialists, are just because Siege is so popular, because, you know, Call of Duty got into the operator game because of those two. So does Battlefield. I mean, bro, they had something going for them and they just I don't know.
History, because even on the American faction, there's a black female characters that you can play as in the multiplayer. They barely had black combat soldiers during World War II, and I don't know if you remember America being super racist in the 1940s, so that does not fly. Even in the Germans, they have females you can play as, the Japanese females you can play as, the British females you can play as for the multiplayer. You know, there is an argument to be made for women to be in video games. It's that it's less gay to stare at a woman for 12 hours when you're playing than it is to stare at a man.
You know, I know you're gay.
So there is that. That's a nice little bonus.
I think why a lot of people got upset, especially the guys that like to adhere to history about women being in video games, is that it's just not implemented in the right way. If they would have implemented women in the role that they should have been in, I think it would have gone over very well, because there were badass women. Like I said, those Soviet snipers racking up tons of German kills, that's a very good story. And if they implemented it and not really forced it down, but showed off and even highlighted those women, that would have been fine with me, and I'm sure fine with everyone else. But the fact that the way they forced it to change a historical narrative, that's when things start to get really hairy. And
that's when problems started to arise, pretty much. Again, I'm gonna say this, I didn't really have a problem with it. I just wanted the game to be good. To me, I feel like I got money's worth. But yeah, to other people, yeah, not great.
That's when things start to feel like George Orwellian 1984 rewriting history status. Ultimately, I think it has to do with something called ESG scores. And I'm sure you've heard of this before, but it's essentially called an environmental, social, and governance score. Now, what is an ESG score?
I'm not familiar. I think I've heard the term, but I'm not familiar with it. What exactly is it?
Essentially, what this is it allows an investor to feel better about their investment, meaning that you adhere to a lot of the current political narrative.
Oh my, yes, dude. I think, okay, it's a completely different topic. I don't know if I'm gonna like tap into it, but yeah.
Going on in the landscape. I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but it's essentially the idea. ESG score gets tied back to a lot to like Vanguard, BlackRock. It's essentially like a safeguard for investing, and I think it even has ties back to the World Economic Forum. Why this is that ESG scores
Okay, I will say the company I was thinking of, Sweet Baby Incorporated. Like, they are a huge proponent of ESG. That's all I'm going to say. Like, that's all I'm gonna say. Even though it's gaming related, I feel like we should touch on that some other time.
Make people feel good about what's going on, because you are being concerned with the environment, modern day narrative. You're being concerned about the social aspect of stuff, inclusion, diversity, modern day narrative, and then the governance of how you adhere. I actually don't really know how the governance. I guess essentially how you're governing your company and if you're adhering to other stuff. Sue me, I'm not the most educated fella, but I do care about random niche Battlefield topics. So a little bit of historical context on the company itself is that DICE was the original maker of the Battlefield games, and then Electronic Arts acquired DICE in 2006. Now this ties back into ESG scores because EA has an ESG score of 13.4 last I checked from just open source Googling. Now ESG score is going to come into play maybe in every facet of how they do business, whether it's how diverse their board is, how diverse their employees are, and how diverse they can make their game. They have a good ESG score because they want to have a better rating to get more capital to do better business. Now, everything usually ties back to money. When the CEO was confronted about the women in the video game, essentially they were like, women are here to stay because my daughter looked at me one day and said, how come there's no characters that look like me in the game, daddy? And the dad just didn't have the balls to tell his daughter.
How do you pronounce that? Soderlund? Hang on, let's go back.
The balls to tell his daughter to go read a history book. When the CEO was confronted about the women in the video game, essentially they were like, women are here to stay because my daughter looked at me one day and...
Yeah, Soderlund. Soderlund? Look, I think that looks Norwegian or Swedish. I don't know how to pronounce those things. I'm sorry.
Said, how come there's no characters that look like me in the game, daddy? And the dad just didn't have the balls to tell his daughter to go read a history book. Apparently he was like, all right, I'm gonna change history for my daughter.
I mean, yeah, you could have genuinely avoided a lot of this. The thing is, you could have just said that, it could have just, like, said that, not... You could have just said all the things you said, you know, off the record, right? You just keep it to yourself. Just don't say if you don't like it, don't buy it. That is, you know, PR self-die, pretty much.
Kind of wild when you think about it, and everyone's like, okay, and I think it's brilliant. When you get to the CEO level of power at a major company like that, you really have to understand that these people are playing some very intense Machiavellian level games. So if you're not familiar with the term Machiavellian, it's like a cloak and dagger, politicking, looking behind the shadows, doing one thing while saying the other, saying one thing and doing the other. It's all politicking. All our politicians do it, everyone in positions of power, all play to the Machiavellian court. It is just how the world works, and the sooner you realize that, the more a lot of stuff's gonna make sense. So when the CEO says, it comes out, hey, my daughter wanted more representation in a video game. What he's doing is he's showing one crowd that he is very supportive and progressive and including, and it's winning him brownie points with people that may have not even cared about the game, and from a marketing standpoint, it adds controversy. So now you have both sides of the aisles arguing and talking about your game, boosting it in the trending setting. And 3, it helps with benefiting the financial cause with a good ESG score. Actually, it's a pretty brilliant move because controversy does sell, but it would come back to haunt them yet again in those.
Yeah. That was not a great year for Battlefield when, like, especially when you put it up against that year's Call of Duty, which I think was Black Ops 4. I'm fairly certain it was Black Ops 4. But yeah, it did not look good when you saw the side by side.
Pre-orders. Now the ESG score is one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video, and that's because we have seen it pop up so much more throughout our society, especially ramping up within recent years. It feels like, you know, it's been creeping up, it's been creeping in, and then even in 2020 it just went through the roof. If you think about the Bud Light deal, how that was just out of nowhere and really not in touch with their user base, it's like, why is this happening? Chances are it goes back to ESG scores. Everyone wants that sweet, sweet loan money that has to do with the ESG scores, and that's essentially capitalism. Now, one thing that capitalism happens is so you have to adhere to these certain guidelines, or else, you know, you lose out on a lot of funding, pretty much. I think that's essentially the gist of it. I didn't necessarily know about ESG prior to this, so that's why I didn't really say much, but I think I got like a lot of it now, so this is really informative. They backfire. When Target tried to roll out their woke gender line, I think for kids, essentially they lost $9 billion. Now, why would they take such a risk, or why would they do that? Potentially they can make it all back with ESG scores. That's a lot of money. And it's something to be on the alert for. What I'm trying to get at is that it helps out to understand what's going on in the world. Because if you can take something that's happening and you're looking at it from right here, and you may be thinking, why? Why is this happening? This is so dumb. And then we pull it back and we look, okay, there's a lot of money exchanging in hands. This was a calculated business.
yeah, you gotta broaden your perspective essentially nowadays, because having a closed mind is not profitable, especially if you're an entertainment company like DICE or EA. Yeah, not a great situation, not a great conundrum that they found themselves in with this.
Risk in the name of wokeism, and then people are trying to look more progressive because they can get more money. This is essentially why it's happening, and it's something to be very aware of and how it ties into our modern day world. And I'm hoping that the ESG score will start to go away. I'm hoping that it just dies out because people are going to realize this isn't really great for business. This isn't hitting our target demographic. Now, even as I
Will it actually die out though? I don't necessarily know, because, you know, as long as political correctness is, you know, a big sort of point to like pretty much everything, you know, you're always going to have to adhere to like new unspoken, unwritten guidelines. You're gonna have to, you know, fall in line with like what people want to hear, what people want to be like presented to them, or else, you know, you lose out on a lot of things, and thus your ESG score is lowered. At least that's what I think I got from all of that. So yeah, ESG score, will it go away? Maybe in the next in the next, you know, 20 to 25 years, give or take. But I don't know. It's probably always going to be a thing. Let's just finish this up.
As I say this, there's a show on Amazon Prime called Reacher, and it stars Alan Richardson, and he is a straight white male protagonist, and there is no wokeism in the show, and the show is crushing at the box office as far as Amazon shows are concerned. It's doing really, really
well. I should probably watch this show, but then again, I don't really watch TV shows or, like, you know, web shows or whatnot, so...
well, even beating out Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, which has a pretty stud female cast in it. And it kind of goes to show that society is really hungry for stuff that doesn't have the woke agenda in it. I know what you're thinking, like, hey, why? This feels like really out of the norm, but it's something I've just been thinking about a lot, and I feel like it fits in the channel demographic rather well. Gentlemen, thank you for watching so much. Right. I really had to rant about Battlefield 5 to get it out of my head, and ESG scores kind of came down to the why of it sucking, because it truly could have been an amazing game.
Alright, so, yeah. That got a lot more political than I wanted it to at the end, but, you know, thing is, I really like Battlefield 5. I really wanted to see it actually succeed. I wanted to see a whole lot of different things, like, you know, Eastern Front, Fall of Berlin, D-Day. Things like that. But unfortunately, support was cut, and we may never actually get those things. Unfortunately. Very sad. Here's the link to the video. Okay, so I think that's about it today.